Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World with me, John Jordan. So, as I've been doing over the last 2 weeks, I'm thinking about Guild of Guardians, and I'm trying to put some numbers into basic formulae to have a look at sort of the flow between downloads and players and on-chain activity. So, I've been looking at on-chain activity in various places. Can't really see anything that has sort of kicked in from Guild of Guardians going live. So it went live through the app stores on the 15th of May. So that's through Apple and Google app stores. I'm just trying to sort of see, get a feel for the numbers really. And if I'm not seeing anything, why I'm not seeing anything. So we don't really have any, or we don't have any numbers, any official numbers from Immutable about downloads. The only number we sort of did have was before it went live. They said they had 1 million pre-registration, so you can pre-register for an app or a game going live on the app stores, which just shows you're interested in it, a bit like a sort of wish list for Steam, I suppose. That process actually had been live for a long time, so I think that number was sort of overly indexed because lots of people had sort of months before had said, I'm interested in this, and then it went live and they sort of had forgotten about it, didn't care. So those things tend to work better when there's a sort of a few months of sort of lead time, and Guild of Guardians had a long lead time on that. So the other reason I don't think we've had 1 million downloads, or probably anything close to it, is because Immutable hasn't announced 1 million downloads, which I thought they were going to do quite quickly. Obviously, with free-to-play mobile games, you can, somewhat get the downloads you want by just doing loads of marketing and spending money. So, in a sense, it's good they're not doing that. But anyway, let's put some figures into it and sort of see what we might expect for different scenarios in terms of what we would end up in terms of on-chain activity. So I'll split these into mid, low and high sort of scenarios, and sort of two basic download criteria. So you have 500,000 or 1 million. I think 1 million is too high, as we'll sort of see. 500,000 is probably a bit high as well. If we go to Guild of Guardians here on the Google Play App Store, it says it's had over 100,000 downloads. So when it first went live, actually, it was about 50,000 downloads. It was 50,000 plus. So that has changed. But obviously, even if we assume it's had the same on Apple, then that would be sort of 200, maybe 250,000 rather than 500,000. But anyway, let's this is slightly optimistic on this side. But anyway, let's go for 500,000 to begin with. So the way we've broken down the flow is the game's been out for 2 weeks. So that we'd be looking at what's the D14 retention. So that's something that free-to-play mobile people spend a lot of time looking at. Their day 1 retention, their day 7 retention, their day 14 retention, their day 30 retention, their day 60 retention, all these sort of things. And it's all a bit mixed up because what they would have is different cohorts depending on, iOS people generally retain better than Android people because iOS is more sort of North America. Normally, a sort of richer customer, whereas Android devices are sort of, everyone's got an Android device. And obviously different countries sort of play into that as well. And depending on where you sort of sourced your traffic from marketing, they would all have different, potentially all have different retention models. So, but we're just sort of guessing rough figures here, say 20%. So that sort of means, there's lots of assumptions in this modelling, but anyway, that sort of assumes if we had 500,000 downloads on day 1 of the launch, then 20% of those would still be playing now. So we'd have the game would have 100,000 players. So clearly, every day has a different cohort from this point of view as well. So this is, a part of the modelling. And then sort of the next thing to think about is that to actually get onto the blockchain side of stuff, you need to log in with your Immutable Passport wallet. So that's probably the biggest unknown, I think. So you basically can play the game without that at all, as sort of like in guest mode. But then when you get to certain stages, the endless mode in particular is the first one that opens up, and then you have to create an account. You can just do that by putting in your email. It's very sort of simple, but it's still a sort of a friction point. And if you don't do that, probably people just stop playing the game there. And you need to create a passport account to do any of the NFT stuff. So that's sort of quite important when you're modelling that, and so I think that's quite friction heavy. People, just playing a game and I've got to put my email in it. So I think you could easily lose 75% of your audience there, and so suddenly these numbers start, because these numbers aren't, are sort of they're obviously fractions of 100%, or you start going from, even if you had 500,000 downloads, you're suddenly down now to 25,000 potential sort of players who have gone through this sort of system, still playing, put in their email. You've lost 3/4 of your audience just by this point here. Then there's the idea of buyers. So these are people who would actually spend money in a free-to-play mobile game. So this obviously depends a little bit on the game. Hyper casual games, really don't have any in-app purchases or very little, so you'd expect sub 1%. More hardcore games would have a higher rate, but obviously they're going to have a smaller audience. So 5% I think generally would be seen as quite good. Actually, if you had a 5% conversion rate into just someone spending any money in your game, that would be seen as quite good. But we'll take this for our mid at least. So suddenly, again, because that means 95% of people are not spending money, we're down from 25,000 to 1,000. And then you can sort of spend money in app in the game and not touch any of the blockchain stuff. So they don't really say anything about NFTs in there. They call them ascended heroes, but you can just buy things, buy sort of in-game assets and sort of energy and gems and stuff, and not even touch the NFT stuff. So again, we sort of have another thing here for people who've just come in, and this is what I'm modelling here is people who don't know anything about blockchain, just download the game through the App Store. These are the various sort of gates they have to get through if they want to end up doing blockchain stuff. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of other people who, like me, know about blockchain, are playing Guild of Guardians because they like the blockchain, are all over it. But we assume that's a pretty small group, maybe about 1,000 people, and they're very active. But here we're seeing the flow of sort of normal, just general gamers, and the onboarding into Web3. So if we assume 30% of all the people gone through all these sort of points, and they've actually spent some money, and they actually upgrade one of their in-game characters, and they ascend it, which is what it becomes as an NFT. If we assume 30%, finally get there, then suddenly we're down, we started off with hundreds of thousands of downloads, and now we're down to, hundreds of potentially only hundreds of people. So that's our mid-range. I'd say this is just a way of thinking about things. Obviously, these numbers are wrong, but it's just a way of thinking about how quickly, actually, and looking how quickly you can sort of drop down from hundreds of thousands of downloads to actually people who actually own NFTs, and it is quite sort of staggering. And this is our mid-range. If we go for our low range and downgrade all the numbers, so if we go now for our D14, our retention after 2 weeks, if we say 10%, which is not a terrible figure, that's not and suddenly we've gone from 500,000 downloads to 50,000 players. If we assume Passport is like really friction heavy, people just don't want to put their email in. We're down to 5,000. If we assume buyers, actually people don't really want, and even actually 3% would be seen as actually quite good. We could drop it down to even lower than that. And then if we assume particularly that people are happy to spend the money in the game, but this NFT stuff, this ascending of heroes, sort of don't really get that, and really bad friction. Then suddenly, despite having a lot of downloads, then we're down to handfuls of people, really quite small numbers. So I'd say this is probably a little bit low, and some of these things are probably there would be sort of cohorts who, if they stuck their email in, then they maybe this NFT thing would be higher because the people who put their Passport email, created a wallet with their email, might be sort of actually be more likely to spend. So let's go for a higher one. 30% D14, I think people will be very happy with that. Immutable if they got that. If we assume Passport, 50%, stick my email in, 50-50. 10% of buyers, that would be absolutely amazing if they got to that level. And then pretty much everyone who buys something goes straight into NFTs. I mean, even then we're still this is so insanely high that we just wouldn't there's no way these numbers would be correct. Even then we're down to under 4,000 or certainly under 10,000 people from a million who are actually getting into the NFT side of things. So this is my view obviously would sort of be around about the mid, would be somewhere probably where we'd like to be, more not in terms of these sort of breakdowns, but more in terms of where we end up in terms of numbers. Still early days, obviously 2 weeks into a game going live, it may be a bit ridiculous, but maybe this does show that me expecting to see big on-chain activity based on this thing going live is optimistic, because just the likelihood of onboarding people who know nothing about blockchain into these sort of things and getting them to buy NFTs, even though they don't know they're NFTs, is just, you know, it's just really hard work, because you've got all these different things they've got to jump through, and there's an education process around this. So the other thing I'm looking at, actually pulled some numbers from Token Trove, which is the main marketplace where these things are traded. So could have a quick look at that. So these are the NFTs in the game. So we can have a look. There's a whole bunch of sort of different characters. There's obviously, you know, the usual sort of breakdown we get from an RPG. We have support characters, ranged characters, tanks, usual stuff. So cheapest one is $2.66. So this is a rare normal Chroma. So Chroma's the skin. He's a Cinder, Warrior, Redeemer, Strength. Sort of not a tank, but more like a tank type figure. So we have all these different sort of types. He's an assassin, and these are the sort of say the cheapest NFTs. She's a support character. Actually, we can click here and see here what's happened to the price. So the price sort of went up before the game went live, and the game went live on the 15th, and we can see the price has gone down since then. That's partly because people are potentially sort of selling off now who had NFTs, and maybe more NFTs are being created in the game as well, because people are buying these Ascension packs. Even if it's a few hundred people doing Ascension packs, maybe that would have an impact. Interestingly, so rare ones are about just under $3. Epic ones are not that more expensive, $4. So epic ones obviously are sort of more rare than rare ones, and sort of more powerful in the game. And then we can also look at legendary ones, and these are $20. So again, we can see pretty much for every character is a similar price arc, where it sort of peaks before the game comes out, and then the price has come down, you know, a lot. Partly because now you can, some of these characters, or all these characters, you can ascend in the game by buying the Ascension seals, or some of them you can actually buy directly. So I think some of these ones, Ashwin, you can buy in the game, and this one as well. Some of them you can just buy with it in-app purchase. So there's more of these are becoming available. So impacting the price, and obviously the price in the marketplace is going to be the same as the price in the game. It's about $20. So that's what's going on there. And I pulled this data to see what was going on in terms of the sales of legendary, epic, and rare NFTs on this marketplace. So obviously this is people who are who know what they're doing and really into the game in terms of sort of knowing crypto. So these are not the I don't think we're seeing anyone coming to Token Trove and selling NFTs from the game yet. That's not really pointed out in the game. That's not really something that you would expect to see. So this is the breakdown. Rare sales are in blue, red is epic, and legendary is in sort of orange. We have a big spike here before the game comes out. That's because a certain feature went live called Cracked Hearts, where you could sort of generate NFTs by burning 3 of the same rarity. Won't really go into all that detail, but that was something that sort of crypto people really liked, and obviously we can see there's a whole bunch of buying, mainly of rare characters here. The game goes live on the 15th. So we do sort of see a spike the week that starts. This is the Monday, Tuesday. I think it goes live on the Wednesday. And since then, you know, we have seen, you know, we can see there has been an impact. So the game going live, the trading is doing about 2,000 NFT trades a day now, or 1,500 to 2,000. Obviously, that's much more than it was before the game went live, under 1,000, apart from this one day. The other interesting thing can see is what's those different sort of proportions. So we can see obviously the rare ones are the cheapest, so that tends to be you know, rare and epic. I mean, the prices come together, so they're obviously going to be the majority of the trading. The percentage of the overall trading is going to be epics and rares. Let me see here, they're down to about sort of 40%, you know, roughly running about 40% each. But interestingly, one thing that has happened as the game's gone live, we've seen legendary. The percentage of legendaries being sold daily has gone from under 10% to now, you know, 20 to 30%. So I guess that's something something you'd expect to see. Something I started out buying rares and then moved on to epics, and now buying legendary because they're just better in game. They're more expensive, clearly, from, you know, $3 to $4 to $20. But for the sort of high-end players, the people who want to have the sort of the best characters, then you just move to, you know, it's $20. It's not $1,000 you're spending, so it's not out of reach. So that's sort of an interesting sort of scenario where we'd expect to see, I guess, over time, the legendaries is probably gonna increase in terms of percentages as the game gets sort of older and older, because that's how you're going to have to get those better characters to stand out more. Slightly weird on the pricing on the rares and the epics sort of coming together. Obviously over time, again, we'll see how the pricing goes. We expect there to be be a bit more gap between epics and rares, I think, over time. But in terms of the sort of the selling, and if we're thinking about the original thing we were looking at, which is sort of how many people would be playing here. I mean, I've not picked out the wallets. Because I can't really see any. I'm not sure of any of the data sources on the wallets. But from what I have seen, if we assume people with one wallet are buying multiple NFTs, so if we have like 2,000 sales, it's not 2,000 separate players or wallets. That'll be hundreds of wallets. So hundreds of wallets sort of plays into this sort of scenario, I suppose, our mid scenario. As I say, most of this trading will be from people who know what they're doing. So that's the sort of the sort of, I wouldn't draw a direct comparison between these numbers and what's going on in this sort of NFT store. But over time, I guess, as we expect to see, this obviously going up over time as more of these people sort of come in here. But we wouldn't expect suddenly to have a massive, thousands of people piling in and these things, doing tens of thousands of NFT sales a day, because people who didn't know about NFTs are now being sort of engaged by the game and educated by the game. So I think this is sort of actually, I was a bit optimistic in what I expected to see, and actually what we see here is obviously what has been happening, and that's hundreds of players of the sort of the top end of the market buying these legendary ones, and other people sort of coming in and experimenting and maybe buying rare ones. But over time, we expect to see sort of legendary and epic sort of taking up the major share of the market, and this sort of going up over time. But I think to get to 10,000 sales, that's going to take a while. So anyway, we're keeping an eye on it. Thanks for watching this video, and see you again soon.